Today, a third accuser, Julie Swetnick, came forward with extraordinary claims of this really ugly culture surrounding the prep school that Kavanaugh went to. Aggressive behavior, alcohol-fueled parties, wild and arguably illegal sexual activity. Her attorney, Michael Avenatti, is with us tonight. The president, this afternoon, in a rare solo press conference, stepped up his defense, calling all the claims against Kavanaugh false and a big, fat con job. His attack extended to Michael Avenatti, the lawyer for Swetnick, as well as Stormy Daniels. Take a little listen.
36 years, there's no charge. All of a sudden, the hearings are over, and the rumors start coming out. And then you have this other con artist, Avenatti, come out with another beauty today.
Michael Avenatti is with us now. Welcome back to Primetime. You are not the story. I do not intend to make you as such, but I do think you have to be given a chance to respond to the President of the United States, who called you a con man.
Well, you know, if anyone knows a con, I guess it would be Donald Trump, based on the last 2 years, Chris. You know, look, this guy has zero credibility in the eyes of most Americans and certainly in the eyes of the world. He's a habitual liar. He is trying to distract away from the very serious allegations made by multiple women against Brett Kavanaugh, who has no business being on the U.S. Supreme Court. I said a while ago that he should go to the next name on the list, and that's exactly what he should do. But look, as it relates to my client's allegations, she stands behind them. She's 100% credible. We want the FBI involved immediately to vet these allegations, to take interviews with all of the witnesses, including Mark Judge, including Brett Kavanaugh, and perhaps we can test the veracity of his claims the other night on Fox News about being such an innocent high schooler where he would walk little old ladies across the street and bring an apple to every teacher of every day during the school year. But look, we want a search for the truth, a legitimate search for the truth.
All right, so let's take our time here. Let's start with process. You're calling on the FBI to continue their background thing. That's something for the president to do. You could take Ms. Swetnick to the FBI to launch a complaint. You could go to local authorities. Why haven't you done that?
Well, first of all, I don't believe we could take her to the FBI because I don't think the FBI would have jurisdiction over her claims of abuse or inappropriate sexual conduct as pled or as stated in the declaration. I think that that would be a matter for state authorities in the state of Maryland, and we may very well do that. We may plead out a criminal complaint. But, Chris, let's be clear. Even if we were to do that today or last week or over the weekend, that would not change or have any impact formally on the judicial nominee process before the Senate Judiciary Committee.
All right. Next question about this, just in terms of looking at it outwardly, and then we'll get into the credibility, and I appreciate you taking this opportunity. This is what the process demands for fairness. What do you believe that your client can demonstrate that is most damaging to Brett Kavanaugh? Because in reading the affidavit, one, the affidavit has some holes. There's some fact gaps. There's more information that would be needed, obviously, in this process. But she does not blame him. She does not point the finger at Brett Kavanaugh for ever doing anything to her or ever having seen him do anything to anybody else. What is the most damning nature of what she can show?
Well, Chris, I'm not going to weigh the allegations in the declaration, but here's what I will say. Even if you negate one paragraph, pick a paragraph of the declaration, the balance of the paragraph is still sufficient to call into question his fitness to hold a seat on the U.S. Supreme Court. You could eliminate half of the declaration and still have a problem with his fitness for the position. And here's the other thing I'll say. I don't think that your characterization is a fair reading of the declaration. I think the declaration is detailed as it relates to the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh individually, as well as the allegations against Mark Judge and others.
Right. I'm saying that what she says she suffered, which I'm not questioning. I have no basis to question. I don't know enough about any of this stuff. But I'm just pulling it out so I have it with me. The idea of what was done to her, she says she was incapacitated at the time. She certainly couldn't form consent, she says. But she does not identify Kavanaugh as her attacker. That's what I'm saying. And she's not saying that she ever saw Kavanaugh attack anyone else. So I'm asking you, what do you think she could say if she were given the chance that should mean the most to senators? That's my question.
But Chris, she actually does say that she witnessed Kavanaugh conduct himself inappropriately and verbally and physically abuse women in a sexual manner. I think that's early on in the Declaration. I mean, it's right there in black and white. And here, let me say this.
Paragraph 8, by the way, for people at home. That's what Avenatti is talking about. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chris. That this is a detailed statement. It is a sworn statement under penalty of perjury. And these facts, if alleged in a criminal context to start a criminal investigation, would be more than sufficient for the process to begin. And again, we're at the beginning stages. We're not at the end stages. We're asking for an FBI investigation. In my experience in nearly 2 decades, Chris, when you have an individual that is making a story up, they don't offer to take a lie detector test, which my client has done. They don't offer to sit down with the FBI and tell the FBI what they know. And they don't offer to identify other witnesses to the FBI, which is exactly what she's doing.
Let's talk about them, Michael. You say that you have 1 or 2 other people that she told at the time. It's in the affidavit. Are those people ready to be produced? Are they willing to come forward? Have they written affidavits or made affidavits as well?
I think that we are going to hear from the witnesses that can support this declaration in the coming days. And again, hopefully we're going to sit down with the FBI and we're going to have an investigation. You know, I find it ironic, Chris, that we allow the FBI to investigate the most heinous crimes on U.S. soil. 9/11, the Unabomber, Timothy McVeigh, serial killers, a host of crimes that we trust these very capable men and women of the FBI to solve. And yet, for some reason, Lindsey Graham, Chuck, or the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Donald Trump and others, Mitch McConnell, do not want to trust the FBI with getting to the bottom of these allegations.
Right. Although, you know, look, to be fair to the process, Chuck Grassley, the chairman, certainly has made that point. That's the name you were looking for there. They are not in the business of proving or disproving these types of allegations or even really assessing the credibility. But what they could do, and what I've been arguing about on the show without any regard to who's telling the truth or not, because frankly, again, I don't know how I could assess it. I don't know how the senators can, would be talk to everybody, use their field offices, being able to canvass people that maybe the Senate can't get as easily, and create a record professionally of knowing how to ask questions and have everybody in one place with what they say about everything that matters, and then the Senate could proceed. But they're deciding not to do that. So thank you for giving us this opportunity, at least to look at Julie Swetnick and what she offers and what the challenges are. The idea of what would happen if she were to be asked about this stuff. One of the things that came up in assessing this and looking at it is there's an age difference with Swetnick and Kavanaugh and the other ones. She's a couple of years older than they. I think Kavanaugh was born in 65 and she was born in 62. So that means if this dating, and again, it's approximate, she says somewhere around 1982, she would have been in college and still going to high school parties. This isn't a judgment of her habits, but how does she explain that, why she was still around the same group of guys?
Well, Chris, these weren't just high school parties. They were like any number of other parties. I mean, you've been to parties, I've been to parties. There's an age difference at parties. I mean, this wasn't just limited to 17 and 18-year-olds. There were many different ages that went to these parties, anywhere from 16 years of age to 22 years of age, which isn't that big a spread. And so there was a cross-section of individuals at these parties very often, mostly high school students, some local college students, some college students home on break, et cetera. So it was a cross-section of people like you would expect at any other party.
Understood. So that's the age. So she says that she went to a number of these parties, and sometimes, not every time, she heard about spiking. She heard about what she calls a rape train. One of the questions is, God forbid you ever see anything like that. She's 20 years old or whatever age she was when she saw it. Why didn't she ever think, oh my God, look what they're doing to this girl. I have to tell somebody. I have to call the cops. You know, this is wrong. You know, she knew it was wrong. She wanted to avoid it, but she kept going to the parties and she didn't ever blow the whistle on these guys. Why?
Well, Chris, she was aware of the spiking of the punch et cetera, which is why she avoided the punch. And she was aware of some activity going on in these back rooms, but she was not aware of exactly what was transpiring in these back rooms. You got to understand there were a lot of people at these parties in general, and I think she's going to have valid explanations as to why she didn't report it at the time. And look, I want to say this.
Go ahead.
I'll put up her credibility against Donald Trump's or Brett Kavanaugh's any day of the week. I mean, all of these women cannot be lying. I mean, how many women are we up to now that are accusing Brett Kavanaugh of inappropriate conduct? There's plenty of judges and attorneys in America that don't have allegations like this in their background who would be more than qualified to sit on the U.S. Supreme Court for life.
I hear what you're saying. As you well know, I'm not calling anybody a liar. I'm testing what we have been told in the affidavit and what you can argue on her behalf. That's what fairness demands. I know you know that, and I know you welcome the opportunity, and I appreciate you for taking it. The reason I ask it is I hear you saying she wasn't exactly sure what was going on. I'm not calling her Columbo. I'm saying in paragraph 12, she says, I witnessed efforts by Judge and Kavanaugh and others to cause girls to become inebriated and disoriented so they could then be, quote, gang raped in a side room or bedroom by a train of numerous boys. I have a firm recollection of seeing boys lined up outside rooms at many of these parties. That's why I ask. It seems as though she saw this more than once, identified it for what it was, but didn't do anything about it. I'm not blaming her, but I want to understand why, if she now looks at it as being such a pernicious activity, why didn't she do anything about it?
Well, Chris, I mean, it sounds like you are blaming her. I mean, the reason why she didn't do anything about it is for the reason I just said, because she didn't understand the magnitude of what was going on in these back rooms until she was gang raped at one of these parties. And I can assure you that after she was gang raped at one of these parties that was attended by Brett Kavanaugh and Mark Judge, she never went back. And look, I think the most important witness perhaps in all of this, relating to all of these allegations, is Mark Judge. And the fact that Mark Judge is Brett Kavanaugh's best friend or one of his closest friends, and he doesn't want him to be called to testify, to the point where they have him hiding out in a safe house so he's not subpoenaed to testify, tells you everything you need to know about who's telling the truth.
One other thing I want to give you a chance to respond to here. You saw what's in the Wall Street Journal. They have reporting. Look, you know this is going to happen. Swetnick, if she wants to be at this level of public discourse, there's going to be a look at her as well. There are a couple of things that came up in there. One is that she seems to have used the firm of, or the attorney of, Professor Ford, Deb Katz, that either she had somebody from that firm or she used Katz herself in an employment matter. Do you know anything about that, the association between your client and the lawyer for Professor Ford?
I know that many years ago she used Deborah Katz. Deborah Katz is an exceptional lawyer, as I think she's demonstrated in connection with Dr. Ford. She's one of the leading lawyers in Washington, D.C. on sexual harassment and other type of claims. So it's not surprising that she used her. But, I mean, what's the allegation?
The suggestion would be that there is coordination. And the question becomes, did Katz give you Swetnick?
No.
Why didn't she use Katz? Does Ford and Swetnick know about each other? Is there any coordination of concern here?
No, there's no coordination whatsoever. My client, Julie Swetnick, reached out to me because she has observed my conduct over the last 6 to 7 months and the results that I've obtained for Stormy Daniels and others. She's familiar with my background, and she asked me to represent her. We fully vetted her, and therefore I agreed to represent her.
When you were vetting her, you found out about the Katz, you're saying?
I'm sorry?
You found out about Katz when you were vetting her, or is that new to you from the Journal?
No. At some point in time, I became aware of Katz.
The other thing that's in the Journal is that, and again, this isn't my reporting on it, but I'll take the Journal at face value, give you a chance to answer to it. An ex-boyfriend says she can't be believed, that she took out an injunction against him. They had an ugly fight. Everything she said was wrong. She was menacing to him, harassing of him. Can't take her seriously.
Well, first of all, I don't think the boyfriend has any credibility whatsoever. This is a guy that is engaged in fraud on a number of occasions and been found to have committed fraud. He used her resume to obtain jobs without her knowledge and then was found out and subsequently fired. But look, I'm not here to cast aspersions for the next 10 minutes about her boyfriend. Here's what I'm going to tell you.
Please.
I'm sure that if you went to some of my ex-girlfriends, they probably wouldn't speak too kindly about me, and I'd probably say the same thing about you, although you are one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, Chris.
Well, now we know your judgment is certainly flawed by that last statement alone. Michael Avenatti, This is what fairness demands. She's going to be put to the test when she comes forward. And that's the right thing to do. We need to know to judge the credibility as well as what these people say about others. But thank you for taking the opportunity.
Chris, let me just make one last point. Okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm willing to make her available for 8 hours of cross-examination by Brett Kavanaugh's attorney under oath if, in turn, she will make her client, Brett Kavanaugh, available for 8 hours of cross-examination by me. I'll do it tomorrow.
Right, and they will not because they already have one set of questioners that they're going to deal with tomorrow. But Michael Avenatti, this is relevant information. I appreciate you answering the questions. It helps the audience. Thank you very much.